Li Huan floated in the silence of his ship. It was a good silence, the kind that let a man forget for a little while. Outside the thick cockpit glass, the stars were just distant, cold points of light. He was in the gray belt, a graveyard of broken ships and forgotten battles. His own ship, the Persistent, was a patchwork of old parts. It was ugly, but it ran. Huan liked things that ran, even if they complained. He was a scavenger now. He picked through the bones of dead warships, pulling out copper wire, intact computer chips, and sometimes, if he was very lucky, a little treasure. 10 years ago, he was a soldier. He fought in the war against the Kvani. It was a bad war. The Kvani were like giant, smart insects. They were fast, they were cruel, and for a long time they were winning. Humanity won, but the cost was written on Huan's face. A thin, pale scar ran from above his left eye down to his jaw. It didn't hurt anymore, but he saw it every morning. His hands moved over the ship's controls. They were steady hands. He was looking for a signal, any signal that wasn't just static. His computer beeped softly. It found a large piece of metal drifting ahead. The scan said it was part of an old human cargo ship. Good. Cargo ships sometimes had useful things. As he got closer, something else appeared on the edge of his scanner. A smaller, fainter blip. It was not from the cargo ship. It was coming from a different cloud of debris. The signal was very weak. It was not a standard human distress call. It was a pattern, repeating over and over. It was old tech, maybe pre-war. Huan sat back in his chair. The rules of the gray belt were simple. You see a strange signal, you usually ignore it. Strange signals meant trouble. Trouble meant Kvani traps or pirates or worse. But the signal was so weak. It was almost dead. Whoever sent it was probably already gone. Still, it tugged at him. It was the same feeling he used to get before a mission. A bad feeling. He turned the Persistent toward the signal. The debris field was a mess of torn metal and frozen gases. He guided the ship carefully, the engines humming a low tune. The signal got stronger. His scanner finally got a clear look. It was a life pod, not a human design. It was smooth and oval like a large egg. It was covered in a strange, dark material that seemed to drink the starlight. It was attached to the wreck of a small, elegant ship. That ship was full of holes. Laser fire. This was a battlefield remnant. Not from the human Kvani war. This was something else. Something older. Huan brought his ship close. He extended the docking arm. With a soft clunk, the arm connected to the life pod's hatch. He put on his old space suit, the one with the faded military patches. The airlock hissed open, and he stepped into the cold, dark silence of his own cargo bay. The life pod sat there, mysterious and still. He walked up to it. There was a control panel, but the symbols were flowing circles and dots. Nothing he knew. He pulled out a universal power tool from his belt. He found a likely access point and connected the tool. The screen on his tool lit up. It started decoding. The pod had been active for a long, long time. Its power was almost gone. The stasis field inside was failing. There was one life sign. It was faint, but it was there. A single heartbeat. Huan's own heart beat faster. He had to make a choice. Open the pod here or bring it inside his ship's airlock first. Bringing it inside was safer for whatever was in there. But it was also riskier for him. What if it was dangerous? What if it was sick? He saw a small viewport on the pod. It was fogged from the inside. He wiped the outside clean and shone his helmet light in. He saw a small form curled up inside. It was a child. A little girl. She had pale skin and dark hair. She was very still, but the scanner said she was alive. She was wearing a simple gray suit. Her face was peaceful in sleep. Huan stopped thinking. His body moved on its own. He dragged the entire life pod into his ship's main airlock. He sealed the outer door and pumped in warm air. Then he went to work on the hatch mechanism. After several minutes, there was a loud hiss. A seam appeared around the pod, and the top half slid open. A wave of cold, sweet-smelling air washed over him. The little girl did not move. He reached in, his gloved hands gentle. He detached the thin wires connected to her suit. He carefully lifted her out. She was light, too light. He carried her out of the airlock and laid her on a soft crash couch in the main corridor. He fetched a thermal blanket and wrapped her in it. He watched her small chest. It rose. It fell. She was breathing. Juan sank into the pilot's chair, his suit still on. He looked from the stars outside to the little girl on his couch. The silence in the ship was different now. It was no longer empty. It was waiting. He had gone looking for scrap metal. He had found a child. And in the deep, quiet places of his mind, the memories he kept locked away began to stir. Memories of smoke and screams, and another child's hand he could not hold on to. He closed his eyes, but he could not close out the past. It had just floated into his present, silent and small, wrapped in a silver blanket. The ship's medical scanner was basic, but it gave Juan the facts. The girl was alive. Her body was very cold, but her heart was strong. Her breathing was steady. The scanner said she was human, mostly, but there were small differences. Her bone density was higher. Her brain activity was complex, even in sleep. There were traces of elements in her blood that Juan had never seen before. He watched her for a long time. She did not wake up. He needed advice. He went to the comms panel. He sent a tight beam message to his only real friend, Kim Yuna. She was a smart mechanic who ran a small repair station on a neutral moon called Telos. The message would take a few hours to reach her. He wrote, Yuna, found something. Not scrap. A kid in a life pod. Old pod. Not human design. Kid looks human but isn't. What do I do? He sent it and turned back to the girl. He had to get her warm. He carefully lifted her again and carried her to his small sleeping cabin. He laid her on his bunk and wrapped another blanket around her. He placed a heating pad near her feet. He sat on the floor next to the bunk, his back against the wall. He was very tired. His eyes closed. He dreamed of the war. He was back in the rain on the planet called Viridia. The mud was thick. The air smelled of burning fuel and something sweet and rotten. He was running, his squad behind him. They were heading to a small settlement. A distress call said the Kvani were there, taking civilians. They had to hurry. In the dream, he saw a flash of light. He heard Private Choi scream. Then everything was noise and pain. He never saw the settlement. He never saw the civilians. He only saw the fire. Juan woke up with a start. His heart was pounding. The room was dark except for the soft green light from a panel on the wall. He looked at the bunk. Two large, dark eyes were looking back at him. The girl was awake. She was completely still, only her eyes moving. They watched him with a sharpness that was not like a child's. There was no fear in them yet, only careful study. Juan moved slowly. He did not want to scare her. He sat up straight. He offered a small smile. "Hello," he said, his voice rough from sleep. The girl did not speak. Her eyes flicked from his face to the room, to the door. "My name is Juan," he said. He pointed to his own chest. "Juan." Her eyes followed his finger. She said nothing. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Juan stood up, moving like he was near a scared animal. He went to the small food unit on the wall. He took out a nutrition bar. It was bland but safe. He broke off a small piece. He walked back and held it out to her, his palm flat. She looked at the food, then at his face. Slowly, a small hand came out from the blanket. Her fingers were slender. They took the piece of food. She brought it to her nose and sniffed. Then she took a tiny bite. She chewed thoughtfully. She swallowed and looked at the rest of the bar in his hand. Juan gave her the whole thing. She ate it quickly but neatly. When she was done, she looked at him again. This time, her eyes seemed a little softer. "Are you thirsty?" Juan asked. He mimed drinking. She tilted her head. Then she spoke. The words were fluid and musical. They meant nothing to Juan. But the tone was a question. Juan shook his head. "I don't understand." He pointed to the water dispenser. He got a cup of water and brought it to her. She took it and drank it all. She handed the empty cup back to him. "Thank you," she said, in clear, perfect Korean. Juan froze. The cup almost fell from his hand. You can speak? She looked confused by his shock. You gave me food. You gave me water. You are not them. The bad ones. The clickers. She said the last word with a small shiver. The Kvani, Juan whispered. The word felt like ice in his mouth. You were hiding from the Kvani. The girl nodded. She looked down at her hands. They came. There was loud noise. My mother put me in the little room. The safe room. It went dark. I was cold. Then I was here. She looked around the small cabin. Where is here? You are on my ship, Juan said. My name is Juan. What is your name? The girl was silent for a moment, as if deciding if she should tell him. She looked into his eyes, searching for something. She must have found it. Mira, she said softly. Mira, Juan repeated. It was a nice name. How old are you, Mira? She thought. I was 7 cycles when the lights went out. Juan did not know how long a cycle was for her people, but she looked like a young girl. 8, maybe 9 in human years. Just then, the comms panel in the main room chimed. Yuna was calling back. Stay here, Mira. I will be right back, Juan said. He went to the comms panel. Yuna's face appeared on the screen. She looked worried. Juan, a kid? What is going on? Is she okay? She is awake. Her name is Mira. She speaks Korean, Yuna. Perfectly. Yuna's eyes went wide. That's impossible. That pod wasn't human. The translation must be instant in her head. That's high-level tech, Juan. Really high level. Who is she? I don't know. She hid from the Kvani. Years ago, I think. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Juan, listen to me. This is big. Someone important lost her. Someone with powerful technology. You need to bring her to tell us. To me. We can figure this out quietly. Do not talk to anyone else. Do you understand? Juan looked back toward his cabin door. He could see a shadow near the floor. Mira was listening. I understand, he said. I am coming to tell us. He ended the call. He walked back to the cabin. Mira was sitting on the edge of the bunk, her feet dangling. She looked small and lost. We are going to a safe place, Juan said. A friend will help us. Mira nodded. She slipped off the bunk and stood up. She walked over to him and, without a word, took his hand. Her hand was small and cool in his. Juan looked down at their joined hands. A deep, old feeling stirred in his chest. It was the feeling of having something to protect. It was a feeling he thought had died in the mud of Viridia. He led her to the cockpit chair and let her sit next to him as he began the preparations for the long journey to Telos. The journey to Telos would take several days. Juan set the course and let the ship's computer do the work. Then he turned his attention to Mira. She was sitting in the co-pilot's chair, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was watching the stars streak by into lines of light. She was quiet for a long time. Juan did not push her to talk. He knew about silence after bad things happen. He just worked, checking the ship systems, making simple food. After a few hours, Mira spoke. Her voice was small in the quiet cockpit. Your ship is old. Juan almost smiled. Yes, it is old. But it is strong. It gets me where I need to go. It is not like my mother's ship, Mira said. She looked at the controls. Those lights were blue, and the chairs were softer. Your mother had a nice ship, Juan said carefully. Mira nodded. A shadow passed over her face. The bad ones, the Kvani, their ships are ugly. They sound like breaking bones. She shivered. Juan knew that sound. He knew it very well. He decided to change the subject. Are you hungry again? She nodded. He made 2 bowls of warm soup from the food unit. They ate together in the cockpit. Mira watched how Juan held his spoon and copied him exactly. She was a fast learner. Over the next 2 days, a routine began. Mira followed Juan everywhere. If he checked the engine vents, she stood 2 steps behind, watching his hands. If he sorted scrap metal in the cargo bay, she would sit nearby and arrange small pieces of wire by color. She did not play. She observed. She also asked questions. Many questions. Why does that light blink? It means the oxygen is good. What is that sound? It is the water recycler. It cleans our water so we can drink it again. Where do you sleep when I am in your bed? This last question made Juan pause. I sleep on the couch. It is fine. Mira looked at the hard, narrow couch in the main area. She did not say anything, but that night, when Juan went to check on her, he found her curled up on the couch instead. She had left the bunk empty for him. Mira, you should have the bed, he said. You are bigger, she said, her voice sleepy. The bed is for you. Juan did not know what to say. He picked her up, blankets and all, and carried her back to the bunk. You are the guest, he said. And you are a child. The bed is for you. He tucked the blankets around her. In the dark, her small voice came. My mother used to do that. Juan's throat felt tight. Go to sleep, Mira. She was quiet, but he knew she was not asleep. He sat on the floor again, his back against the wall. After a while, he heard her breathing become slow and deep. One day, Mira was looking at the old photos Juan had stuck to a wall near his workbench. They were pictures of his old squad. Young men and women in uniform, smiling. One was of him and his friend, Park Ji-hoon, sitting on the hood of a ground vehicle. They were laughing. Who are they? Mira asked. They were my friends, Juan said. From a long time ago. Where are they now? Juan looked at the photo. Ji-hoon's face was bright with laughter. They are gone, he said simply. Mira thought about this. She pointed to a woman in another photo. She looks kind. She was. Her name was Yuna, too. Like my friend we are going to see. But this Yuna was a soldier. Did the Kvani take them? Mira's voice was very quiet. Juan nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. Mira reached out and touched the edge of the photo. Her finger traced the smile of Juan's friend. The Kvani take many things, she whispered. Then she looked up at Juan. But you saved me from them. Juan looked away. I just found your pod, Mira. That is not the same. It is the same, she said with a child's certainty. Then she went back to looking at the pictures, leaving Juan with a strange, heavy feeling in his chest. The day before they were to reach Telos, Mira was in the cockpit with him. She was looking at her own hands, turning them over. Juan, she said. Yes, my skin. It does something in the light. Juan looked. Under the bright cockpit lights, he saw it. A very faint shimmer, like dust from a butterfly's wing, just on the back of her hands and her cheeks. He had not noticed it before. It is pretty, he said, because it was true, and because he did not know what else to say. My mother's skin did that too, Mira said. She sounded sad. Will I see her again? Juan did not have an answer. He thought of Yuna's warning. Someone powerful lost this girl. That could mean a family searching for years. Could also mean people who would want to hide where she came from. He did not know which was true. I do not know, he said honestly. But we will try to find out. That is why we are going to see my friend. She is very smart. She will help us. Mira seemed to accept this. She leaned her head against the side of the chair and watched the stars. Juan watched her. He saw the little shimmer on her skin. He thought of her strange pod, her perfect Korean, her quiet courage. She was a mystery, and for the first time since he pulled her from the cold darkness, Juan felt a flicker of real fear. He was not afraid for himself. He was afraid of what might happen when the world outside his small, old ship learned that Mira existed. Telos was a moon that looked like a rusty ball of rock. The space station, called the Hub, hung in its orbit. The Hub was not a nice place. It was a place for people who did not want to be found. Traders, out-of-work pilots, and people like Juan who lived between the cracks. It was perfect for Yuna. Juan guided the Persistent into the crowded docking area. The station controllers gave him a bay number. He flew toward it, his hands steady on the controls. Mira stood next to his chair, holding onto the armrest. She watched the other ships and the busy traffic of cargo loaders with wide eyes. It is loud here, she said. Yes, Juan agreed. Stay close to me when we get out. Okay? Do not let go of my hand. Mira nodded seriously. She grabbed the sleeve of his jacket. The ship settled into its docking clamp with a soft thud. Juan powered down the engines. The sudden quiet felt strange. He put on a simple jacket to hide the military cut of his clothes. He thought for a moment, then took an old, worn cap from a hook. He gently put it on Myra's head, tucking her dark hair underneath. It was too big for her, but it hid her face a little. "Ready?" he asked. Mira took his hand. Her grip was tight. The station air was warm and smelled like oil, cooked food, and too many people. Juan led Mira through the busy corridors. People of all kinds walked past. Most did not look at them. That was the rule of the hub. You do not see anything. Yuna's workshop was in a quiet section. The door was marked only with a number. Juan pressed the buzzer. The door slid open. Kim Yuna stood there. She was a short woman with sharp eyes and grease stains on her hands. She looked from Juan to the small girl holding his hand. Her serious face softened for just a second. "Come in. Quick," she said. They stepped inside. The workshop was a messy place full of machine parts, tools, and computer screens. The door hissed shut behind them. Yuna crouched down to Myra's height. "Hello, Mira. I am Yuna. I am a friend." Mira looked at her, then up at Juan. He gave a small nod. Mira looked back at Yuna. "Hello," she said politely. "Juan told me you are a very brave traveler," Yuna said, standing up. She looked at Juan. "Let's get some answers." She pointed to a chair. "Mira, could you sit here for me? I have a small light. I just want to look at your eyes and take a picture of your hand. Is that okay?" Mira sat in the big chair. She looked small in it. Yuna's scanner was a gentle blue light. She scanned Myra's eyes and her palm. Data began flowing across a nearby screen. Yuna's face grew very still as she read it. "Juan, a word," she said, her voice low. She walked to the other side of the room, behind a large engine block. Juan followed. "What is it?" Yuna turned a screen toward him. It showed a DNA spiral. Part of it was highlighted in blue, part in a soft silver color. "This is Mira. The blue is standard human genetic markers. The silver, that is not human. It is not Kvani either. It is something else. Something very advanced and very, very secret." "What does that mean?" Juan asked. "It means she is a hybrid," Yuna whispered. "A mix. Someone blended human DNA with something else. On purpose. A long time ago by the look of it. This is not a natural birth. This is design." Juan felt cold. Who would do that? Before Yuna could answer, a loud alarm blared from her main computer console. A red light flashed on the screen. Yuna rushed over. "What is that?" Juan asked. "A proximity alert. A high-grade scan just hit the station. Military grade. It is looking for something." Her fingers flew over the keys. Her face went pale. "It is looking for a specific energy signature. The kind given off by a high-level stasis pod when it is recently opened." She looked at Juan, her eyes wide with fear. "They found you. They tracked the pod's wake-up signal." "Who?" Juan demanded. On the screen, Yuna pulled up an external visual. A ship had arrived just outside the station traffic zone. It was like nothing Juan had ever seen. It was long and graceful, made of a smooth white material that seemed to glow. It had no sharp edges. It looked both beautiful and deadly. "That is an Illyrian Royal Guard vessel," Yuna said, her voice full of awe and terror. "They never come to places like this. They keep to their own territory. They are more advanced than anyone. And they want her back." A communication request flashed on the screen, marked with the same flowing symbols that were on Myra's pod. Yuna looked at Juan. "They are hailing the station master. They will lock this place down. They will take her." Juan looked across the room at Mira. She was watching them, her eyes worried. She had heard the alarm. There was no time. The old soldier in Juan took over. Fear was a luxury. "Get her to my ship," he said to Yuna. "Use the back tunnels. Now, I will meet you there." "Juan, you cannot outrun that ship." "I don't have to outrun it. I just have to be gone before they get permission to board." He ran to Mira and scooped her up. "Listen to Yuna. Go with her. I will see you at the ship. Be brave. Myra's arms went around his neck. She was scared, but she did not cry. You promised we would go together, she said. And we will, Juan said. This is just a different path. Go. He handed her to Yuna, who took her and disappeared into a dark service door in the back wall. Juan turned and ran back into the noisy corridor. He did not go toward his ship. He went toward the station's busy main market. He needed to be seen. He needed to draw attention away from the quiet docking bay. If the Illyrians were scanning for him, let them scan the crowd. Every second he gave Yuna was a second closer to getting Mira away. The main market was a flood of noise and movement. Juan pushed through the crowd, his head down. He could feel a change in the station. The normal chaotic sounds were being cut through by the sharp, official voices of station security over the loudspeakers. They were asking for calm, telling people to prepare for a customs inspection. It was a polite lie. The Illyrians were coming aboard. He moved toward a public comms terminal, a dirty screen on a wall. He plugged in a small data chip from his pocket. It held a basic program, a ghost signal generator. It was an old soldier's trick. He activated it. For a few minutes it would make his personal comms chip, still in his pocket, look like it was broadcasting from a different part of the station. A small distraction. He then ducked into a maintenance hallway, leaving the crowded market behind. The service tunnels were quiet and lit by dim yellow lights. He ran, his boots echoing on the metal grates. He had to get to his ship. He heard the sound of heavy boots ahead. Station security. They were blocking the main route to his docking bay. He slid behind a large pipe and waited, breathing softly. 2 guards walked past, talking in low, nervous voices. Never seen a ship like that. The station master is shaking. What do they want? Someone, a thief, they said, stole something precious. The guards moved on. Juan slipped out and took a different tunnel, one that went down a level. It was darker here. He came to a junction and stopped. He heard a soft sound. A sniffle. He looked around a corner. In a small alcove, Yuna was crouched, holding Mira close. Myra's face was buried in Yuna's shoulder, but she was not crying out loud. Yuna saw Juan and her eyes filled with relief. The way to Bay 42 is blocked, Yuna whispered. They have guards on every entrance near your ship. Juan looked at Mira. She lifted her head. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. She looked at him with absolute trust. That trust felt heavier than any enemy. There is another way, Juan said. The old cargo conveyor. It runs behind the bays. It's dangerous and it's not for people. But it goes right past the persistent. Yuna's eyes widened. That's a death sentence, Juan. It's a vacuum chute for packing crates. It has maintenance crawl spaces beside it, Juan said. He had studied the station's blueprints years ago, a habit from the war. We can get to the service hatch for my bay. It's our only chance. They had no time to argue. They followed Juan deeper into the station's belly. The air grew colder. The noise of the market was gone, replaced by the deep hum of the station's power core. They reached a heavy, round door labeled, Hazard Materials Transfer. Juan worked the manual wheel. It groaned open. A gust of cold, stale air blew out. Beyond was a narrow metal walkway with a railing. Next to it was a dark, smooth tunnel, the conveyor. A warning light flashed red every few seconds, illuminating the empty channel where crates would fly at high speed. Thankfully, it was idle. Stay close to the wall, Juan whispered. He went first, then Mira with Yuna last. They moved quickly along the walkway. The only sound was their footsteps and the distant thrum of machinery. They were halfway to Bay 42 when a deep clang echoed through the tunnel. Then a low hum started. Yellow lights began to strobe along the conveyor tunnel. No, Yuna breathed. They're activating it. Someone is sending cargo. Run, Juan yelled. They sprinted. The hum became a whine. From behind them, a rush of air began to build. The conveyor was powering up. A cargo crate would turn them to paste. Juan saw the service hatch for his bay up ahead. It was too far. He grabbed Mira and pushed her ahead of him toward Yuna. Take her. Get to the hatch. He turned and ran back a few steps to a control box on the wall. He smashed the glass cover with his elbow. Inside was a big red lever. He pulled it down. A loud alarm blared. A heavy blast door began to slide down from the ceiling, right across the conveyor tunnel. It was meant to seal off a section in case of a breach. The whine of the conveyor became a scream as it tried to move against the closing door. Metal shrieked. The blast door sealed shut with a final boom, blocking the conveyor just before a large crate shot into the sealed section with a deafening crash. The silence that followed was broken only by the alarm. Juan ran back to the hatch where Yuna was already working the lock. Her hands were shaking. The lock clicked open. They fell through the hatch into the quiet, familiar space of the Persistence cargo bay. Juan slammed the hatch shut and locked it. He looked at Yuna and Mira. They were safe. For now. To the cockpit, he said, already moving. They strapped in. Juan fired up the engines. He sent an urgent, override request to the docking clamps. For a miracle, the station computer, confused by the alarms, released them. The Persistent drifted free of the dock. On the main screen, the beautiful, terrible white Illyrian ship hung in space before them, blocking the path to open space. A communication request appeared on his screen. Not from the station, directly from the white ship. This time it was not a request. It was a command. The screen filled with the image of a tall, severe-looking man in a white uniform. His eyes were a pale, piercing gray. "Scavenger vessel," the man said, his voice calm and cold. "Cut your engines. You have something that belongs to the throne. Surrender the child and you will live." Juan looked at Mira in the co-pilot's seat. She was staring at the man on the screen. She did not look scared anymore. She looked confused. She leaned forward, peering at the symbol on the man's uniform. Juan's hand moved to the warp drive controls. It was old and unreliable. A blind jump could tear the ship apart. But it was their only chance. He looked at the Illyrian. "You don't know what she is to me," Juan said, his voice low and steady. He slammed his hand down on the emergency warp engage button. The ship screamed in protest. The stars outside stretched into lines. And everything went black. The warp jump was like being inside a thunderclap. The ship shook so hard Juan thought the old metal would tear itself apart. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered and died, then came back on dim and red. Then, with a final, shuddering groan, the ship dropped back into normal space. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Only the hum of the backup power and the ragged sound of their own breathing filled the cockpit. Juan's hands were clenched on the controls. He forced his fingers to move to check the systems. The main engine was dead. Life support was on minimal. The navigation computer was a mess of error codes. They were alive, but they were floating dead in space. "Is everyone okay?" His voice was a dry croak. Yuna, in the seat behind him, let out a shaky breath. "I think so. My teeth hurt." "What did you do?" "Blind jump. Short but fast. I don't know where we are." He turned. Mira was staring out the cockpit window. She was very still. Her small hands were gripping the edges of her seat. Her face was white. "Mira?" Juan asked, his chest tightening. "Are you hurt?" She slowly turned her head to look at him. Her large eyes were full of something he couldn't name. Not fear. Something deeper. "That man," she whispered. "On the screen. His mark. The circle with 3 lines. What about it?" Yuna asked gently, unfastening her straps and leaning forward. "It is the mark of the Royal Guard," Mira said, as if reciting a lesson. "They protect the Queen. My mother." The words hung in the air. Juan felt the world tilt under him. He looked at Yuna. Her face had gone from pale to utterly bloodless. She understood before he did. "Your mother is the Illyrian Queen?" Yuna breathed. Mira nodded. A single tear traced a clean line through the dust on her cheek. "She put me in the pod. When the clickers, the Kvani came. She said the guard would come for me. They never did." She looked at Juan, her expression breaking. "Until you came. And then they came to take me from you." Juan's mind was a storm. The battlefield on Viridia. the secret mission, the retreat, the guilt that had eaten at him for 10 years. It crashed together in a single blinding moment of clarity. Viridia, he said, the word like a stone in his mouth. 10 years ago, the Kvani attacked a hidden diplomatic outpost. We were sent to get the civilians out. It was a trap. We were too late. The place was already on fire. He saw it again, the smoke, the screams in a language he didn't know. I saw a door, a sealed door. I tried to get it open. There was a woman inside. She was holding a child. She pushed the child toward me just as the ceiling started to fall. He looked at Mira, seeing not just the girl before him, but the terrified toddler in the smoke. I grabbed you. I ran. I put you in the first escape pod I could find, a small oval one. I sealed it and launched it into the evacuation queue. I turned back for the woman, for your mother, but the whole section collapsed. His voice cracked. I failed. I thought you both died. I carried that with me every day. Mira was listening, her tears falling silently. She slid from her chair and walked to him. She put her small hands on his scarred cheek. You saved me, she said, her voice clear and certain. You are the reason I am here. The pod went to sleep. It hid. It waited. For you. Yuna was typing frantically on a portable scanner, pulling data from Myra's earlier medical scan and cross-referencing it with old, encrypted war logs. Juan, the outpost on Viridia. It was never listed as human. The files were sealed. It was an Illyrian sanctuary, a secret meeting place. She looked up, her eyes wide with awe. The civilians you were sent to rescue. That was the Illyrian queen and her court. You didn't fail a mission, Juan. You saved the queen's heir. The truth settled over the broken cockpit. The weight Juan had carried for a decade didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It was no longer the weight of failure. It was the weight of a promise he didn't even know he'd kept. A new alarm beeped, weak but insistent. The long-range scanner was coming back online. On the edge of its range, a ship had just warped in. One ship, the beautiful, deadly white ship. It had followed their desperate jump. It was coming. They're here, Yuna said, all the color draining from her face again. Juan looked at his ship's dead controls. They had no power to run, no power to fight. They were a sitting target. He knelt down in front of Mira. Mira, they are here. Your mother's guard. They will take you home. Myra's hands clenched on his jacket. I want to go home, but I want you to come. Juan shook his head, a sad smile touching his lips. I don't think they want me to come, little one. I am just a scavenger. But you are a princess. You need to go. He stood up and went to the main airlock controls. He began the manual sequence to open the outer door. If they were going to take her, he would hand her over himself. He would not let them break his ship apart to get to her. The white ship grew larger in the viewport, blotting out the stars. It did not hail them. It simply moved closer, like a cat approaching a mouse. A soft magnetic clamp took hold of the Persistent, holding it gently but firmly. A light on the airlock panel turned green. They were being asked to dock. Juan took a deep breath. He looked at Yuna, then at Mira. He held out his hand. Come on. Let's go meet your family. The airlock door of the Persistent hissed open. On the other side was a world of light and silence. The hallway was wide and clean, made of a soft white material that glowed gently. The air smelled like cool water and fresh flowers. It was the opposite of everything in Juan's old, rusty ship. 6 guards in smooth white armor stood in a line. They held no weapons that Juan could see, but he knew they were deadly. They were tall and still, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. The guard from the screen, the severe man, stood at the front. His pale gray eyes were fixed on Juan with cold suspicion. Then the guards parted. A woman walked forward. She was not tall, but she seemed to fill the space. She wore a simple gown of gray and silver. Her dark hair was streaked with white. Her face was lined with years of grief and authority. But her eyes, large and dark, just like Myra's, were fixed on the little girl with a look of such raw hope it was painful to see. Myra's hand tightened in Juan's. She took a small, hesitant step forward. She stared at the woman, her small face a storm of confusion and memory. Mother! The word was a fragile whisper in the silent hall. The queen's stern composure shattered. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She took a knee on the deck, bringing herself to her daughter's height. She opened her arms, a silent, trembling invitation. Mira let go of Juan's hand. She ran. Not a slow walk, but a child's desperate sprint. She threw herself into her mother's arms, burying her face in the silver gown. The queen held her, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She whispered words in that fluid, musical language, her voice cracking with a decade of lost love. Juan stood just inside the airlock, Yuna beside him. He felt like he was watching something too private to see. He looked down at the deck, giving them their moment. After a long time, the queen stood, lifting Mira into her arms. Mira clung to her, but then she twisted, looking back at Juan. She pointed a small finger directly at him. Her voice, loud and clear in the quiet, rang out in Korean.
엄마, 나를 구해준 사람이 여기 있어요.
Mom, the person who rescued me is here. The queen's gaze, full of tears and joy, followed her daughter's pointing finger. It landed on Juan, the scarred man in the dirty jacket, standing in the doorway of a broken ship. Her eyes changed. The joy did not leave, but it was mixed with a dawning, staggering recognition. She knew that face. It was in the old, classified reports. The grainy image from a human soldier's helmet cam, glimpsed in smoke and fire. The man who had taken her child from the collapsing ruins. The man believed dead. She slowly lowered Mira to the floor but kept one hand on her shoulder. With the other, she made a gesture. The guards instantly relaxed their stance. The severe captain looked surprised but obeyed. The queen took a step toward Juan. Her eyes moved over his face, tracing the scar, seeing the weary honesty in his eyes. You, she said, her voice now speaking careful, accented Korean. You were there, in the fire on Viridia. Juan nodded, his throat too tight for words. Your reports said you died. That all were lost, she said, speaking as much to herself as to him. We mourned. We closed our borders. We hardened our hearts. She looked at Mira, then back at Juan. But you lived, and you kept her safe. Not just then. Now. I didn't know who she was, Juan said, finding his voice. It was rough. I just found a child who needed help. That, said the queen, is what makes the truth undeniable. She looked at her captain. This man is not a prisoner. He is the royal daughter's sworn guardian. He is to be treated with the highest honor. The captain bowed his head deeply. By your will, your majesty. The queen then looked at Yuna. And you who sheltered them both. You have our thanks. Yuna just nodded, speechless. Mira broke from her mother's side and ran back to Juan. She wrapped her arms around his waist. He placed a hesitant hand on her head. You will stay, won't you? Mira asked, looking up at him. Juan looked at the queen. He saw no lie in her eyes, only a profound gratitude and a new, cautious understanding. He looked at his own dead ship, clamped to the side of this vessel of light. His old life was over. It had ended the moment he opened that pod. He looked back at Myra's hopeful face. He had saved her twice. He could not leave her now. I will stay, he said. Weeks later, Juan stood on the observation deck of the Illyrian flagship, now heading toward their homeworld. He wore simple, clean clothes, not a uniform. His role was new and they were still figuring it out. He was Myra's guardian, a human advisor, a bridge. Mira was there, holding his hand. She was chattering about her lessons, about the history of the stars. She was happy. She was home. Yuna's voice came over the comm unit in his ear. She was back on Telos, her shop busier than ever. So, you're a diplomat now, huh? Don't get too fancy on me. Juan smiled, looking at the stars streaking by. They were no longer points of cold light. They were points of possibility. Just the same scavenger, Yuna. Just found a different kind of salvage. He felt a gentle presence beside him. The queen, Elara, came to stand next to him, also looking out at the stars. They did not speak. They didn't need to. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was peaceful. It was the silence of a debt paid, of a lost child found, and of a simple, enduring human truth, that courage and kindness could echo across the years and across the stars to finally bring someone home.